programs available to women affected by breast cancer who need your help. Please help us to help others. Call now.
We all know that movement is like medicine, but getting the movement you need to feel better can be a challenge. Now you can keep fit while you sit with QB, the world's leading compact seated elliptical. QB gives you active sitting, letting you burn calories and keep moving in an easy and low-impact way, all while you work, read, or watch TV. QB was named a top 10 gift by Time Magazine and has been featured all over the world. It's whisper quiet while it works your abs and core, hip flexors, glutes, quads, hamstrings, and calves.
QB is a lifesaver for me.
Here's your answer to your problem.
I feel young again.
Join the hundreds of thousands of people moving more with QB. Call to find out how to get your QB with free shipping and a 30-day completely risk-free trial. You'll also get this QB workout mat free. Now keep fit while you sit with QB.
To order, call 800-289-5820. That's 800-289-5820. Call now.
Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We have
I'm not going to resign. I work for the people of the state of New York. They elected me, and I'm going to serve the people of the state of New York.
As you heard there, the governor saying he's not going anywhere amid harassment allegations from 3 different women, and he asked voters to wait for the state attorney general to finish her investigation before judging his actions, though many New Yorkers already have. And the governor got emotional as he spoke about it.
I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional, and I truly and deeply apologize for it. I feel awful about it, and frankly, I am embarrassed by it. And that's not easy to say, but that's the truth. I never knew at the time I was making anyone feel uncomfortable. And I certainly never, ever meant to offend anyone or hurt anyone or cause anyone any pain. That is the last thing I would ever want to do.
I want to bring in Andrew Whitman now, senior political correspondent, with the very latest on a moving story.
Yeah, and I don't know if today's briefing is going to change the trajectory of the story for Cuomo, but something needs to, at least from his perspective. As Cuomo deals with these allegations and the scandal over his handling of nursing homes, his support across New York is plunging, according to the latest numbers. A new statewide poll from a local Albany TV station and Emerson College shows Cuomo's approval rating now underwater by 10 points. For the sake of comparison, 7 out of 10 voters approved of the governor when Emerson took a poll last spring. That poll also asked whether or not Cuomo should resign over these allegations. Those numbers pretty evenly split, with roughly a third saying the governor should step down and 1 in 3 saying he should not. One more poll about the allegations. Nearly 4 in 10 New Yorkers believe Cuomo did it. Only 18% say he didn't, with 44% saying they are not sure. Several Democrats are calling for Cuomo to go, but the head of the state's Democratic Party, Jay Jacobs, is defending him. Jacobs issued a statement that says, in part, quote, "It is both premature and unfair for anyone to opine on the outcome until the investigation is completed and the reports reported." This comes as the state attorney general, Letitia James, has opened up an investigation into Cuomo's behavior. This in the wake of a third accuser stepping forward. The first 2 women, Charlotte Bennett and Lindsay Boylan, worked for Cuomo, and they say he sexually harassed them. The third woman, Anna Ruck, never worked for the governor, but she says she met Cuomo at a wedding, and as you see in the photo, he put his hands on her cheeks and asked if he could kiss her. Rich, back to you.
All right, Andrew, thank you. My next guest, he's been covering this story from the very beginning. Jesse McKinley is the Albany bureau chief at the New York Times. How much do you think the contrition we heard from Cuomo today quelled, if any, of the outrage?
I think it's too soon to say, but there's two schools of thought. I think on one hand, he did what he needed to do in terms of really falling to his knees and saying, look, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't realize that this was offensive. I made a mistake. I'm embarrassed. A lot of that was probably things that he should have been saying before this. By the same token, he did not address any of the specific allegations. He did not address his apologies by name to his accusers. And in some cases, he said things like, I didn't inappropriately touch anyone, which online, on Twitter, on places like that, was instantly kind of seized upon by people that said, well, in the case of Anna Ruck, you grabbed her face. So I think it's a mixed bag, and I think it'll take, a few hours, a day, or two to see how this actually landed, both with the general public and with lawmakers.
I've been a little surprised how long it took for Cuomo to come out as he did today, and also a little surprised that he thought initially there would have been any scenario where he could have controlled the probe, in effect, and appoint the folks instead of the Attorney General taking it over independently. What did that tell you about behind the scenes, how he and his team viewed the allegations? I
think it tells you that Cuomo expected to be able to kind of revert to a playbook that has worked for him before. In other tight spots and other bad scandals that he's had, he's been able to kind of control them. In the Moreland Commission Pro in 2014, he shut that commission down when it got too close to his donors. In the Prococo corruption scandals of a couple of years ago, he had kind of plausible deniability that he didn't know about Prococo because Prococo was out of the kind of executive chamber payroll at that point. So he's always managed to kind of put a little distance between himself and bad behavior. In this case, however, it was him himself who was accused of the bad behavior. And particularly with Charlotte Bennett, the young woman who I spoke to and we reported on Saturday, he has never denied that he said those things to her regarding her positions on monogamy, whether or not she wanted to sleep with older men or had slept with older men, etc. Those kind of unsavory questions about her sex life. So he hasn't addressed those yet directly and seems to be banking a lot that the Attorney General's report will absolve him or at the very least buy him some time until the furor dies down, I suppose.
I saw Senator Cousins, and she and Speaker Hasty would think their support, or at least not joining those calling for him to step down, would be critical. She said if there's inappropriate touching, that in effect would be a bridge too far. What is inappropriate touching here in terms of the line? Holding that young woman's face at a wedding reception? Are we going to figure this out on the fly? Does anyone have an idea where the line is?
I think there's legal precedent for this, but I'm not a lawyer and I can't really wade into that. But I think you do touch on a good point. I think Andrea Stewart Cousins will be critical going forward. There is a kind of a water cooler theory in Albany right now that if she decides that enough is enough and that the governor needs to resign, that would be a very powerful voice in this debate. She's well respected. She is the leader of a overwhelming Democratic majority in the Senate, which in an impeachment scenario would be the judge and jury for Mr. Cuomo. So if Andrea Stewart Cousins decides that the governor's actions rise to the level of removal from office, I think that would make it very difficult for him to continue.
Jesse, I want to stay with water cooler for a second. And I used to be around Albany more, and there were scandals, whether it be corruption, whether it be harassment or whatever, that when the details came to light, some of the rumor mill certainly had preceded that for a while. Andrew Cuomo's been in Albany for 2/3 of his life. And I'm more removed than you are, but I hadn't heard any of this. And again, he's in his 60s now. Does it surprise you, or had you heard rumblings like this for years and only now is it coming to fruition? Because it doesn't fit, at least. Nobody said that he was warm and fuzzy and he was famous for the sharp elbows, but I never heard this.
Well, I think that there's certainly been rumors. But of course, those are just rumors. You can't, if you can't verify them, they're not news. So, I don't think this came completely out of left field, but I think you hit upon something. When you're talking about workplace toxicity, when you're talking about a boss who screams at people and is abrasive in the way that I think most people would agree, it's almost not a matter of debate that Mr. Cuomo can be. I think that it makes people scrutinize your administration. And sometimes what you find when you start to dig around in the kind of inner office activities can be troubling. And I think in this case, Charlotte Bennett had allegedly a very unsettling experience with the governor, and went through the proper channels, spoke to his chief of staff 5 days after this incident. 2 days later, she was transferred. So those sorts of indicators say to me that obviously they took this seriously, and it was troubling enough to them internally to take action. Now, whether or not that is part of a pattern, a trend, we'll see. I think there's a lot of reporters chasing a lot of leads right now.
And finally, past being prologue, and you report on this, as Attorney General, he presided over the probes that led to the resignation of Eliot Spitzer, and certainly you can argue shortchanged David Patterson's tenure in Albany. There is, I don't know if Shakespearean is the right way, but certainly he's not new to how these things work in Albany. It's surprising, however this turns out, that there wasn't at least foreseeability here that something could have been spun out like this by a person who's been around Albany as long as he has.
Well, I think you see that most critically in the way that he initially, after we broke our story on Saturday night, tried to basically set up an investigation outside of the purview of the Attorney General. That was rejected roundly by most people in positions of power in the state. Then he kind of pivoted and said, okay, well, I'll let Tish James be involved, but I'm also going to have the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state, kind of oversee that with Tish. And that was also rejected because that still seemed, that he had his fingers in the pie. So finally, he does have an Attorney General investigation, which, as you point out, is probably not where he wanted this to end up, considering past Attorney Generals, himself included, have really, made problems for governors. And we'll see how fast this investigation proceeds. We'll see what it uncovers. But it is certainly not a comfortable place to be for a governor to have the Attorney General or her subordinates poking around into your personal behavior with subpoena power.
And it's an impossible final question to ask, but the sense, at least from folks I spoke to, is if this is the extent of it, he may survive. And who knows what happens next year, runs or doesn't. But if there's more, it changes the equation, and he may not be able to make that choice on his own.
I think it's a fluid situation. I think it's kind of a knife's edge kind of place right now. I think that he is hoping that he can survive this. I think that, if the news cycles continue and more allegations arise, that's going to be a very tough position to hold.
Jesse, I know how swamped you are. I appreciate you making the time for us, so thank you so much.
Of course, guys.
All right, everyone, when we come back, for the first time since the riot at the Capitol, the head of the D.C. National Guard answering questions under oath about why it took so long for the Guard to respond. Well, after the break, you're going to hear what he had to say, and it was some shocking testimony. News from the contentious hearing next.
Villains, robbers, bandits, crooks, they're all over your TV screen. But the biggest thieves are behind your screen. I'm talking about the cable companies. They charge monthly subscriptions, fees, rentals, and force you to take long-term contracts. Well, it's time to say goodbye to the cable guy. because now you can watch 4K Ultra HD broadcast TV for free. Introducing Clear TV's new 4K Ultra HD design, the Premium HD. Just plug it into your TV and start watching for free. You will instantly receive top-rated network shows, local news and weather, sporting events, and even Ultra HD 4K broadcast shows, all for free. Thanks to federal government mandate, all broadcasters are required to transmit a digital TV signal through the airwaves. The new Premium Clear TV lets you bypass cable or satellite to bring network and 4K broadcast shows directly to your television. Retract the antenna to keep it small or extend them for maximum reception.
Setup was so easy. I took my Clear TV antenna, plugged it into the back of the TV, and now I can watch my favorite broadcast channels anywhere in the house for free.
We're just off the coast here in the Gulf of Mexico receiving free network broadcast HD TV. Imagine all the free shows you'll receive at home.
Basic cable and satellite services can cost you up to $80 a month. That's $960 a year and almost $10,000 over a 10-year period. Watch TV in as many rooms as you like with no additional monthly fees. Stop spending money you don't have to spend. Call or go online now and get your premium Clear TV 4K Ultra HD antenna for only $19.95. It's backed by our 60-day money-back guarantee. Order now and you can add a second Clear TV free. Just pay separate processing and handling. That's a $40 value for only $19.95.
I can't believe I get all these channels for free. Plus 4K Ultra HD. Clear TV is for real.
This is important news for people who took certain drugs for HIV and then suffered serious injury to their kidneys or bones. Your HIV drug could have contained TDF, an ingredient known to increase the risk of kidney disease and kidney failure. TDF has also been linked to bone fractures, bone density loss, and softening of the bones. If you or a loved one took Truvada, Viriad, Atroplus, Stribild, or Complera and then suffered from kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, osteoporosis, osteopenia, or osteomalacia, call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. If you or a loved one took any of these medications and were then diagnosed with kidney disease, kidney failure, bone fractures, bone density loss, or softening of the bones, call Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
I would have sent them there immediately. As soon as I hung up, my next call would have been to my subordinate commanders, get every single guardsman in this building and everybody that's helping the Metropolitan Police, remission them to the Capitol without delay.
Seismic questions for former President Trump and his military commanders tonight about their roles in the Capitol riot. Now, this, as a commander of the D.C. National Guard, pinned the blame directly for both the lack of security precautions and the feeble, torturously long response to the riot squarely on the Trump Pentagon and his military commanders. And for more on another huge day of testimony, and Andrew, to me, the testimony I've heard, this was the most, gobsmacked. Walker was the most compelling witness I heard. He was seated next to someone who attempted to rebut, and in real time, Walker said, not true, and I got the receipts to prove it.
He did bring the receipts, as you say, but the finger pointing really did continue, even as we heard today from Major General Walker, and this as we were going through the security agencies that were involved in the Capitol that day. Perhaps the most concerning revelation, the timeline on January 6th. Everyone in America could see what was happening at the Capitol, but reinforcements came way too late.
At 1:49 p.m., I received a frantic call from then Chief of United States Capitol Police Stephen Son, where he informed me that the security perimeter of the United States Capitol had been breached by hostile rioters. Chief Son, his voice cracking with emotion, indicated that there was a dire emergency at the Capitol, and he requested the immediate assistance of as many available National Guardsmen that I could muster. Immediately after that 1:49 call, I alerted the U.S. Army senior leadership of the request. The approval for Chief Son's request would eventually come from the Acting Secretary of Defense and be relayed to me by Army senior leaders at 5:08 p.m. about 3 hours and 19 minutes later.
3 hours and 19 minutes to get help. But what about the preparations? Why weren't more Guard members at the Capitol on the 6th, even as intelligence showed there were legitimate threats? Walker says the Pentagon was worried about how it would look.
The Army senior leaders did not think that it looked good, it would be a good optic. They further stated that it could incite the crowd, that it would not be their best military advice to have uniformed guardsmen on the Capitol.
Now, one of the senior leaders Walker named is Charles Flynn. The Pentagon initially lied when asked if Flynn was on the call and hasn't explained why they denied that he was on the call. This is an issue because Charles Flynn's brother is Michael Flynn, Trump's disgraced former national security advisor, who at the time was using the riot to encourage Trump to declare martial law and to keep himself in power because of the emergency. Walker and others, by the way, noted how much more willing the Pentagon was under Trump to provide National Guard help to D.C. back during the Black Lives Matter protests last June, but not ahead of the riot in January. It was also around the time of the Lafayette Park incident, where uniformed federal officers used force against protesters. And Walker made clear that decisions not to bring out the Guard ahead of the riot went straight to the top of the armed forces.
It is the Secretary of Defense says that I have to use it as a last resort, but the Secretary of the Army told me, and it's I have the letter, that I could not use the quick reaction force. I'll just read it. Yeah. I withhold authority to approve employment of the District of Columbia National Guard Quick Reaction Force and will do so only as a last resort in response to a request from an appropriate civil authority.
Other times, he said, he would ask for help and permission would be granted. Walker said the top-down interference was so stark, he couldn't even move Guard members from one traffic post to another without permission.
I found that requirement to be unusual, as was the requirement to seek approval to move Guardsmen supporting the Metropolitan Police Department to move from one traffic control point to another.
Now, we got to point out the Defense Secretary at the time was Chris Miller, who had the job in an acting capacity. He was appointed after Trump fired Mark Esper from the job. Biden transition officials later accused Miller of obstructing the transition. And no one knew at the time why Trump fired Esper to appoint Miller, though there were worries about interference with the transition of power that had been floated at the time. No high-ranking Trump defense officials have testified yet, but we also saw today that not every question about the riot has a sinister answer. Asked why rioters known to law enforcement as risks or threats were not confronted or stopped before going to the rally-turned-riot, an FBI official explained the complications.
It's the complexity of trying to gather the right intelligence that helps us predict indicators and warnings. And I spoke earlier about, while there's a volume out there of rhetoric, trying to figure out that intent is very challenging for us in the intel community because it happens on private comms and encryption. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is of the people that we were investigating, so predicated investigations, we don't necessarily have the ability to mitigate the threat they might pose by travel if we don't have a charge.
And Rich, what we're missing right now in this investigation are Trump officials, particularly defense officials, under oath testifying, and subpoenas to get documents about communications that those Trump officials had so that we can get to the bottom of what exactly they knew, when they knew it, and why they did or didn't help.
The piece or pieces of information that came forward today that confirmed some worse suspicions and debunked ideas that this was just a lack of communication. The roadblocks put in front of General Walker, as we just heard there, he called unprecedented in his 20 years in office. Moreover, at one point he said he went around command to ready the Guard for when they finally were going to be okayed. Then there was the incompetence aspect, where finally, through the chain of command, at roughly 4:30 in the afternoon, when they finally okayed it, no one, for the better part of a half an hour, bothered to tell the general that he could finally send the Guard in when we're all watching in live Technicolor, you know, the Capitol under siege in a live real-time insurrection. Listen, we were told originally that Flynn's brother was basically just a coincidence that they happened to share the same DNA, but there was no connection whatsoever. You said it. Flynn obviously was talking about martial law. His brother, who he said exited the room when any of the conversations took place, was one of the two voices that was concerned about optics that was testified today to. Finally, I don't know of a scenario or at least a plausible one, Andrew, where the president, who reportedly during the day had made numerous calls, including a call where House Minority Leader McCarthy doesn't deny the content of which, who called in the middle of the riots to say, Mr. President, send help. And President said, well, at least the rioters seem to me more loyal, to me at least, than you are. If that phone call took place and the president was aware of what was going on, how is it conceivable the president wasn't aware of requests for the National Guard to be sent in as a cavalry? And to this point, as you said, no subpoenas for now. But I think we're going to get to more of those answers. But to me, it was just, it takes a lot to surprise me after the last 4 years. I was shocked at the anger you could see in General Walker here about what could have been done and should have been done and what he expected was going to be done, and how people held up help that everybody in their right mind knew was overdue.
Well, these kinds of requests for help are sort of pro forma. They're just, yo, you need National Guard? Sure, absolutely. That's the way it works almost all the time, except in advance of this rally turned riot, and there are questions that need to be answered to that. We know that the request to send the National Guard over was finally approved by Mike Pence, and seemingly never made it to President Trump. So that's another aspect of all this that needs to be explained. And what you were talking about with the Flynn brothers, I don't know what to make of Michael Flynn's brother being on that call, but I do know that when the questions were first asked, the Trump Pentagon lied about it and said he wasn't on the call. It only as a result of reporting later on that we found out that it was, and now we hear from General Walker that he was the one who was concerned about optics. So that really needs to be unpacked, and that's why that's so suspicious.
Listen, you and I get a little bit into the inside baseball, and maybe to a lot of folks the names don't matter as much, but listen, you had today, Rob Johnson playing the role of jester of the Senate, still trying to make the allegation that somehow these were other bad actors and the rest, and he was shut down. But Andrew, to me, Roy Blunt and Rob Portman, two steadfast Republicans who have looked for excuses to forgive the president for things, they drilled down to anyone on the stage of the witnesses who attempted to mitigate or get around the timeline. And they said, excuse me, how do you have immediate response as part of his job spec, and he can't make a decision on how to respond in real time? I got the real vibe that Republicans, forget what were put off, they were furious by some of the things they learned today, as they say, to be continued. All right, when we come back, COVID, not gone, but tell that to the Texas governor who, believe it or not, has said all mitigation out the window, reopening Texas and telling people they don't even have to wear masks. After the break, the top health official in Houston joins us, and trust me, he's not happy.
This is a national healthcare alert from the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one has diabetes, listen closely. Now, regardless of your age, if you have insurance, you may qualify to receive diabetic testing supplies with little to no out-of-pocket cost. Get free delivery, free information, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers for free. Call the 24/7 Diabetic Health Hotline now for details. Toll free at this number. But wait, there's more. If you call right now, you could get a meter upgrade. In addition, we'll give you a free pair of diabetic socks as our special gift to you. Regardless of your age, if you suffer with diabetes and have insurance, you may qualify to get free delivery of your supplies. Call now. We can help.
Call 1-800-972-0451. 1-800-972-0451. That's 1-800-972-0451. Call now.
The first 3 months, we saved $4,100.
CarShield saved me over $6,000 in engine repairs.
I saved $4,100 out of pocket.
Amazing, amazing.
Customers everywhere agree. If your car is out of warranty, you need to call CarShield before your car has an expensive breakdown.
Without CarShield, there was no way that I could afford to get my car fixed.
An engine, transmission, or computer system breakdown could cost you thousands of dollars, but not with CarShield, America's #1 car protection provider.
CarShield saved us $4,000.
That was great, right?
Yes, it was.
We're just happy with CarShield. They put a transmission in it and a motor. Who does that?
CarShield makes sure you don't have to pay for expensive car repairs.
The components that we're using are not getting cheaper. So nowadays, coverage is even more important.
CarShield covers most makes and models from 5,000 to 150,000 miles.
It's easy, affordable, and no long-term contracts.
And when customers realize that they're getting a $5,000 job for $100, they're excited. I've had customers who were so happy that they did break down into tears and cry.
We saved over $6,000 on a complete engine rebuild of our truck.
With CarShield, I saved over $3,600. It's a no-brainer.
I never have to worry about being taken advantage of when it comes to car repairs.
It's like having a suit of armor around my car.
Cars will break down, and those breakdowns could cost you thousands unless you call CarShield today and get the protection you deserve.
CarShield saved me in excess of $10,000.
And when you call, you'll also receive at no extra cost roadside assistance, towing services, and rental coverage.
If your car's out of warranty, believe me, you want to have CarShield.
Make the smart choice and protect yourself from sky-high auto repair bills. Call now for a free and instant protection plan quote. It's only a matter of time until repairs are needed. And once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-858-4214, 800-858-4214.
When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May.
So on the same day, we got some really great news from the president as it related to the vaccine and the availability soon nationwide for it. And moving up the timetable when it comes to inoculating Americans, we get this inexplicable announcement from the governor of one of the largest states.
For nearly a half a year, most businesses have been open either 75% or 50%. And during that time, too many Texans have been sidelined from employment opportunities. Too many small business owners have struggled to pay their bills. This must end. It is now time to open Texas 100%.
And today, Biden hammered Abbott over his announcement.
I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. The last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters.
As you'd expect, top health experts and lawmakers in Texas are saying the governor's move irresponsible and also blatantly politically motivated.
Dr. Verone, how many straight days have you worked now?
Today is day 349. To be honest with you, yesterday when I found about this, I saw all those 348 days yesterday go down the drain.
This is a political move on the part of the governor to take the attention off the power grid collapse that he and his cronies caused. It will lead to more spread, ultimately more death, and it will make it longer before we can get to herd immunity and really get our economy going again.
The top elected official in El Paso County, which was hit particularly hard, sent the following tweet, and I quote, "El Paso has over 280 bodies in our holding facility and more than 2,000 total deaths have been reported. Governor Abbott's directive to no longer make masks mandatory would be the equivalent to him stating that we don't have to wear our seatbelts, but it would be a good idea if we did." But Texans themselves are having a mixed reaction to the idea of the reopenings.
It's reckless, it's dangerous, it's not a data-driven decision, and you're playing COVID roulette with people's lives.
I think it's time for us to get back to normal, to try to, get past this, and if it gets worse, I guess we can address it at that time.
I know everybody's anxious, I'm anxious, but I think a few more weeks, month, maybe whatever the number may be, shouldn't hurt anybody.
Woohoo! I'm about done with masks.
We all are. I want to bring in our guest right now, Dr. David Pearce. He's the health authority for the Houston Health Department. And talk about a swing doctor. The morning starts, or the early thing that we're ahead of schedule with vaccines. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then you get the statement from the governor. I know when you heard it, you said you were at a loss for words. Can you put into words now just how concerning or frustrating this must be given the last year you've had?
Yeah, it's very frustrating. We still have people dying. Today, the city of Houston are reporting another 7 deaths, and 2 of those are people in their 50s. And, these are not, not that nursing home deaths are acceptable, but as a nation in America, when we lose 30,000 people a year to the flu, most of them are nursing homes, somehow that's okay. Well, COVID is killing people of all ages, and even the 60 and 70-year-olds are often very able-bodied people in society. So none of these deaths are acceptable. None of these deaths are okay. There's nothing okay about any of those deaths. And so it's frustrating when we've done so much. And, a year ago, when we first started foreseeing and trying to predict what would happen, I remember having several conversations with the mayor and other elected officials. The hardest part of this won't be as things get worse and we start ramping up the restrictions and becoming more aggressive. The hardest part is going to be turning things off and knowing what do you turn off, at what rate, at what time, in order to continue to protect the public as we get the virus under control. This is the hardest part right now. And so by just, shutting everything off and taking our foot completely off the brake is probably not the smartest thing that we could have done right now.
And I thought of this, Doctor. I've spoken to a lot of folks, both in the Houston market as well as across our viewing area, doctors and nurses on the front lines. It has been, for me, an unimaginably exhausting year, not just the around-the-clock hours, but the amount of loss that they have had to see before them and to be the final voices to families, et cetera. But at least they saw the light at the end of the tunnel where we could inoculate the vast majority of this country as early as this summer. And to have what the governor said yesterday, I heard some of them say it felt like a slap in the face, like the last year just didn't mean anything and all the sacrifices that went into it. And maybe while that might be some emotion talking, I can understand it, that all the sacrifice and all that we went through with the finish line in sight here to just say, well, we're tired of masks, so nobody's got to wear them anymore, and 100%, of every seat in every stadium you can fill them. That nobody thinks that that's not going to be without consequence.
One of the ways that I've looked at this is, we've been through disasters here in Houston before, particularly with hurricanes and flooding and other types of disasters. And they come in and, the weather event may only last a couple of days, but the devastation caused lasts months. Well, that requires some endurance on our community. And we get out of the national headlines in a couple of days, but there's suffering that continues for a couple of months. Well, with this pandemic, it is, greatly eclipsing how long we've had to deal with it. And it is really a test of our endurance. And I've been so proud of Texans and Americans, for that matter, in our ability to, remain vigilant. But then when we have the restrictions that are lifted, the part of the problem is that it sends a message, a subliminal message, that it's all over and we're okay now. And so one of my other big fears is that just as we're getting vaccine rolling into the community, that people will say, well, the governor said it's all over, so I don't need to get vaccinated either. And if that happens, we're not going to get out of this through vaccination getting us to herd immunity. We're going to get out of this eventually at a much later date with many more lives lost because people don't get vaccinated, the virus continues to spread and kill people, and eventually we'll get to herd immunity, but we're going to get there absolutely the wrong way.
And just put, if you could, an idea of how concerning it is to folks like you, the variant, with the unknowns attached, but of what we do know, the rate of transmission, even potentially being more fatal as a strand. Now's not the time to be tempting the consequences of a variant, right?
Yeah, so here's an important concept that I want your listeners to try to think about. So, back in high school, we were all taught the theory of natural selection, and that is when mutations occur, whether it be in an animal or in a virus, the mutation that then gives the species some survival advantage is the one that takes over. And that we've seen this already, particularly with the UK variant. And so right now, as human beings on the planet Earth, the sooner we can get everybody vaccinated, the less likely that virus will mutate into a way that completely gets around the vaccine. So we've got to clamp this down as quick as we can. So anything that delays that is just asking for the virus to mutate in a way that gives it the advantage to get around all of our defenses. And that's the theory of natural selection. And it happens. It's going to happen if we give it the opportunity. And I'm afraid that that's what we're inadvertently, that's what we're doing.
This is all so hard. There's no reason to raise the level of difficulty even higher. Dr. Peirce, all I can say is hang in there. Thank you so much for a couple minutes today, though. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, we come back. More on the COVID vaccine and decisions by certain lawmakers to say, well, I'm not waiting. I'm going to use Dolly Parton and Donald Trump as two examples of people who got the shot, but only one of them did it the right way with the goal of helping out fellow Americans. After the break, I'll explain.
Remember when taking a hot bath was the best part of your day? And for some, it can be hard and even not safe just getting in. Older bathtubs can be as high as 20 inches. Let's face the facts. As we get older, our knees and backs start to hurt us. Getting in and out of an old bathtub can be difficult and even dangerous. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, a name you know and trust, has the perfect solution for you. We call it the tub-to-shower conversion. We'll remove your old bathtub and the need to step over a dangerously high threshold, replacing it with the safety and luxury of a low-profile walk-in shower. Advanced materials mean no more mold or mildew from an old bathroom. And all this in about a day. As a special bonus to you, you'll get a special extra safety feature for free. So please call now.
Important healthcare news for all Americans. Whether insured, uninsured, or on Medicare, if you feel sick at midnight or your child runs a high fever, you want to immediately speak with a doctor. Now with Telemed One, you have a doctor on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Use your landline, mobile, tablet, or computer to speak or video with a board-certified doctor in your state. With Telemed One, you're quickly connected with a doctor, get diagnosed, and if medication is needed, a prescription is sent electronically to your local pharmacy. According to the American Medical Association, up to 75% of doctor, urgent care, and ER visits can be safely managed by a telemedicine plan like Telemed One. Don't delay. Telemed One is about $1 a day with no per call or video fees. Members and family get unlimited video and phone usage. Get protected now. Everyone is accepted. No insurance needed. Call now.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You know, I was thinking, maybe Cuomo ought to take crisis management lessons from the Governor Abbott playbook. The Texas Neanderthal, as his thinking was rightfully described by the president, I believe that was too polite for my taste. Neanderthal, that suggests that he's ditching masks and any mitigation because he doesn't know any better, if only. First off, this is not Abbott's first rodeo on the dumbass ride. If you remember last spring, he took the courageous position of telling Texans that COVID wasn't so bad and that medicine and science didn't really play in the Lone Star State. That was, of course, until his ERs filled up with patients and constituents started dying in alarming numbers. Magically, he then suddenly embraced mitigation, and unsurprisingly, the numbers became more manageable. But I guess that was then, and this is now. Now, even though less than 7% of his residents are inoculated, again, magically, Texans are now immune to COVID. This fantastical idiocy, it of course has nothing to do with science, but instead the oldest political trick. It's called change the subject. After letting utilities regulate themselves and deciding to become the only state in the union not to be on the national grid, when Texas was plunged into darkness for days, Abbott, not for lack of trying, couldn't legitimately dodge blame. So what did he do? Instead, he decides, well, let's risk lives again, and let's replace responsibility with gutless pandering. Neanderthals, they do not know any better. This is much worse. On the other end of the spectrum, we get the one and only Dolly Parton. Not only did she give $1 million out of her own pocket to fund the Moderna vaccine, but she refused multiple offers to be recognized with medals and honors for her generosity. Instead, she made it a point to be vaccinated on camera, and at the time, she decided to encourage others to do the same.
So I just want to say to all of you cowards out there, don't be such a chicken squat. Get out there and get shot. Okay. That didn't hurt. Just stung a little bit, but that was from the alcohol pad, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. All right.
Should we put a...
A Band-Aid? No. Mess up my beauty mark?
Okay.
I'm joking. You do what you gotta do. I don't want blood on my clothes. Hey, I did it.
You know, long before COVID, she was a national treasure. That's not exactly the same description I'd use for another person who was apparently inoculated last month and surprisingly kept it under wraps. That stranger is the Donald. For reasons still beyond me, the man who famously called COVID a hoax, promised it would disappear last spring, and then decided after the scientists created the vaccine to take credit for it, he instead chose to tell no one he got his shots before he left office. Now, seeing as his followers are the core of the anti-vaxxer movement, imagine for a moment what he could have done to convert the conspiracists to science in the national self-interest. But unlike Dolly, who believes in generosity and country, Trump, like Abbott, cannot imagine ever putting the people first. All right, when we come back, ABC News political director Rick Klein, he joins us for the latest on Capitol Hill, including those explosive hearings about the January 6th riot and the very latest when it comes to the COVID relief bill negotiations.
Help.
When you fall and can't get help,
Help.
you will lie on the floor for hours or days in constant, terrible anguish, which often results in a tragic outcome. But with Life Alert, one touch of a button can get you help fast.
Don't worry, help is on the way.
With any of Life Alert's 3 emergency systems, help can be summoned immediately, whether at home,
I've fallen and I can't get up.
in the bathroom,
I've fallen in the shower.
or on the go.
Help! I'm in the park and I can't get up.
And batteries never need charging. Life Alert saves a life every 11 minutes.
For a free Life Alert brochure, call 1-800-215-6582. That's 1-800-215-6582. Call now. 1-800-215-6582.
After my home was burglarized, I knew I needed to get a home security system. So I did my research and read reviews on Consumer Affairs. So I called.
To help choose the right home security system, search Consumer Affairs to read actual customer reviews and find offers like free equipment and monitoring plans starting at less than $1 a day.
Protect your home. An ADT authorized premier provider wants to help you feel safe by offering you a complete home security system, free, featuring $850 in free equipment with professional monitoring at our lowest rate, starting at less than $1 a day, with installation starting at $99 and 36-month monitoring contract. Upgraded packages require additional install fee for new customers only. Termination fees apply.
I don't think people realize how inexpensive it can be to protect your home and family. That's why I tell everyone to call ADT.
Call 1-800-761-0578. That's 1-800-761-0578.
Attention timeshare owners. This is an urgent consumer alert from the Timeshare Exit Hotline, a national company specializing in helping consumers legally get out of their expensive timeshare contracts. We're offering you a way to legally get rid of your timeshare. So if you're fed up with the maintenance fees that keep on coming and want to learn if you can terminate your timeshare legally and permanently, call today. Call the number on your screen today. It's a free call.
The approval for Chief Son's request would eventually come from the Acting Secretary of Defense and be relayed to me by Army senior leaders at 5:08 p.m., about 3 hours and 19 minutes later.
One of the frankly stunning moments from today's Senate hearing on the Capitol riot. The head of the D.C. National Guard saying it took more than 3 hours for him to get approval to mobilize as the Capitol was under attack. And again, he said optics within primary consideration of a couple of military officials that were holding him back from putting the guys in the field. As that's all playing out, Democrats, they're putting the finishing touches on their nearly $2 trillion stimulus plan. So a lot going on in Washington. And on the stimulus front, Democrats are working on trying to cap the stimulus payments by making people making more than $80,000 a year ineligible for those stimulus payments. Here to discuss the latest on both the investigation of the riot and the COVID relief package, as well as more. Let's bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein. And Rick, I fully intended to start on the latest with the stimulus, and I'll get to it, but the hearings today, yes, we knew that there was some incompetence as to what took so long, but General Walker's testimony said there was more than that. There was obstruction, and I don't think I'm reading between the lines. I looked at senators of both parties at being stunned by some of the testimony about not only how long it took for the Guard to get there, but what held the Guard up. I think today's hearings left a lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, and I think there's huge questions about who was involved. We still haven't really heard from political leadership that was involved in the direct conversations. For as much information as came out during the impeachment trial, we didn't hear from many of the players who were having the direct phone calls. The back and forth has still not played out, and I agree with you that there are big questions around this, and they're relevant questions. As we heard from the FBI director just yesterday, these are ongoing threats. There's chatter about tomorrow as a potential target date, just as one for instance, and these are not there's no indication that I got out of the hearings that I've been watching that the major structural issues have been addressed, or that we even really know what led to the problems in the first place.
We got names as to who is concerned with optics, Rick, and more than that, I'm sorry, but these decisions couldn't have been made in a vacuum without going to somebody in the White House. I know the question was asked and not answered today, but again, we're not near closure as to what led up to and happened on the 6th, and obviously we're going to have a full investigation at some point to stimulus. The state of play right now, I know we told the audience about the means testing that's going to be applied. Is your read for a head count that this not only probably is going to secure the 50 Democrats, but at the end of the day, some Republicans are going to come on board?
I don't think there's going to be many or really potentially any Republicans on board for this. The focus for Democrats, President Biden called into the Senate Democrats yesterday. He wants to keep them on board. He has no margin for error, and they're not operating as if they think they've got votes to play with, because they really truly don't. They need to get their 50 Democrats to stick together. They'd love to get Republicans. There just really hasn't been any indication that that's a gettable goal at this stage. So it's not a dead letter yet, but I'm expecting that if it passes, it's going to pass with that barest of majorities.
To the vaccine rollout, is your sense that this happened organically in terms of J&J and getting two people that normally are Hatfield and McCoys to work together, or that the administration consciously knew they were going to underpromise and overdeliver in terms of the timetable to get these vaccines into arms? As much as you know, what's going on behind the scenes? Because it was a great day in terms of vaccine distribution yesterday.
Sure, and my read is that the Biden White House, so the administration, recognized that that Merck had not gotten as far along as the other major pharma producers in producing its own vaccine, and therefore had untapped manufacturing capacity. And that they were the ones, the Biden folks at least, saying that they're the ones that made that connection, and they're the ones that said, hey, guys, work together. And now you have that potential to have a lot more production.
In terms of infrastructure, we understand that's going to be, once the stimulus, if it gets through, that'll be the next order of business, or one of them. Is there an opportunity? Because I could see both parties wanting this, or certainly a lot of both representatives and senators wanting this in their districts. Do you see there a chance to be major infrastructure projects happening?
Sure. I think, though, the question is going to become on price tags and the pay-fors around it, particularly if this $1.9 trillion COVID package passes. You're going to have a lot of sticker shock. I do think the policy areas are things that you could get Democrats and Republicans working together on. It's been It was almost a joke in the Trump years about how it was about to turn to infrastructure at any given moment. I think there is an opportunity there. I think ideally the Biden team would have had some bipartisan wins off of COVID relief to build on. Instead, they're going to have to find bipartisanship somewhere else. So yes, the topic area certainly is ripe, but it's hard to see in the current spending environment until or unless we're on the other side of the COVID crisis.
Rick Klein, thank you as always. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, when we come back, we'll wrap things up.
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for dental visits. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for transportation to my doctor. Did you?
I didn't know some Medicare Advantage plans may pay to have my prescriptions delivered directly to my home. Did you?
These and more are important benefits some Medicare Advantage plans may give you. So if you're eligible for Medicare, call us right now because you may be eligible to enroll in a plan with amazing additional benefits. Some Medicare Advantage plans may pay for services like these: dental visits, vision coverage, hearing coverage, home delivery of drugs, even gym memberships. Some plans may include no copays for many services and 0 deductibles. Don't wait to find out if you're eligible to enroll in a plan that may include some of these wonderful benefits you deserve. Call us right now. The call is free, the information is free, and there's no obligation. Make this free call now to learn if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan that may include additional benefits you want. Call.
This is important news for people who have taken Zantac or its generic ranitidine and then suffered from cancer. Zantac and generic ranitidine have been linked to cancers such as bladder cancer and kidney cancer. According to the FDA, Zantac and ranitidine contain NDMA, a known cancer-causing agent. NDMA has been linked to cancers of the bladder, kidney, colon, esophagus, liver, ovaries, pancreas, and other cancers. If you or a loved one took Zantac or ranitidine and were then diagnosed with cancer, call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call the lawyers at Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one took Zantac or generic ranitidine and were then diagnosed with bladder cancer, kidney cancer, or any of these cancers. Call now to see if you're eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Our first consultation is free, and we don't get paid unless you get paid. Call Davis & Crump right now. Operators are standing by.
The IRS is the most feared agency in the country and has the power to seize assets, garnish wages, and even put you in jail for back taxes and unfiled tax returns. Don't be a victim. Call Kick IRS right now and let us kick those IRS problems out of your life once and for all. Our powerful team of tax experts will fight hard for you and will not stop until we've resolved your tax problems on your terms. And if you qualify, we may even reduce or eliminate your tax debt altogether.
Call 1-800-590-7496.
Some sad news before we say goodnight. Civil rights leader and counselor to several presidents, Vernon Jordan has died. He was 85. Born in segregated Georgia, Vernon Jordan rose from the humble beginnings to become an iconic civil rights activist, finding remarkable success as a D.C. power broker, businessman, and presidential advisor. Known for his graceful manner and elegant appearance, it was Jordan's keen intellect and calm demeanor which set him apart from other activists of his day. Raised in Atlanta, Jordan later earned a law degree at Howard University, where he watched Thurgood Marshall practice oral arguments. Inspired, he plunged right into the civil rights struggle, heading the National Urban League. He even survived an assassination attempt in 1980. Tapped in 1992 to lead Bill Clinton's transition team, their close friendship in the White House earned him the nickname First Friend.
Ours is an enduring friendship based on mutual respect, trust, and admiration.
Jordan even became an official White House aide and fixer, a position that drew him into controversy during Clinton's scandal involving Monica Lewinsky. Bill Clinton writing of his dear friend, Vernon Jordan brought his big brain and strong heart to everything and everybody he touched, and he made them better. This morning, President Biden saying that Vernon navigated America's boardrooms with an activist heart, working the levers of power in service of progress. The National Urban League, the nation has lost one of its greatest champions of racial and economic justice. His passing leaves a tremendous void that can never be filled.
The next generation has to take the baton and keep going.
If something happened to you,